Greetings, everyone. Continuing to the residential status that we were discussing in the previous session, and we discussed in detail how to decide on the basis of two conditions, that is the basic conditions and the additional conditions, the residential status of an individual. So there are two basic conditions out of which any one condition has to be fulfilled, whereas after making a decision on the basic condition, we move on to the additional conditions, which are again two in number, and both have to be fulfilled. And once the person finally fulfills both the condition, we decide his residential status. So initially, once he fulfills the basic condition, we decide his residential status as whether he is resident or not resident. If he is decided to be the resident of India, then we have to again decide whether the status is ordinarily resident or not ordinarily resident. If it is ordinarily resident, then both the conditions of the both additional conditions need to be fulfilled. And if either of the situation condition is not fulfilled in the second one, additional condition, then he is called the not resident but not ordinarily resident. And we also discussed two examples on that. Let us move on further to the next part. Again, we will be discussing another example here, where we will decide whether the person is a resident, is a resident or not, and if he is a resident, whether he is an ordinarily resident or a not ordinarily resident. So the example before us is that Mr. Maitra, a citizen of UK who came to India for the first time on 1st May 2018. He stayed here without any break for 3 years and left for Bangladesh on 1st May 2021. He returned to India on 1st April 2022 and went back to the UK on 1st December 2022. He was posted back to India on 20th January 2025. We have to compute his residential status for the assessment year 25-26. Now, when you are solving it, let us do it together. How do we go for computation of the number of days? We have it here. First, we will decide the number of days. So the first is we will take the year 2018 to 19. He remained resident here for 335 days. Because he leaves on 1st of May. That means he left. He came to India on 1st of May. He stayed here without a break for 2 years. So it was only for if we consider from the financial year, he came after 1 month. That is the 1st of May means April. After April he came. So delete that 1 month from this. So we get 335 days in 2018-19. Then since he remained here for 3 continuous years, then 2019 to 20, he remains here for complete 365 days. And then 2020 to 21, he remains here for another 366 days. Okay, and then it was because we also have to consider the leap year, and that has to be taken into account. Then next year 2000, what happens in 2021-22? It was he left for Bangladesh on 1st of May. That means he stayed here and he returned only on the next year on 1st April 2022. So that means after he stayed here only for the month of April, and that is April has 31st of March. He came here for 1st of April. Yes, it starts from 1st of April till this date. So he stays in India for 31 days. 31 days, but here it will be he remained rest of the days he remained non-resident. Then for 2022-23, 2022-23, because he came back on 1st April 2022, again in the same year in December he went back. The counting the number of days, it is 245 days he stayed here. If you just count it on the calendar, you will find it 245 days. Then he again went to UK on 1st December 2022, and where he was stayed here till 20th of January 2025. That means for complete 2023-24, he was not at all, 0 days. So he remained. I would say not. He wasn't a resident here. And rest of the years he was the resident, except for 2021-22. This year also. So here we have 2023-24. Then coming back to 24, because he was posted back on India on 20th of January 2025. So that year has to be taken into consideration. And when he came back, on the basis of that, if we compute 24 days for 24-25, it is he stays here for 72 days. Okay, he remained resident here. So if we just add it all for the year. If you just add them together, it is, and for the year, but we have to calculate only for the year 25-26 as asked in the question. So if we just calculate it for the assessment year 2025-26, that is, we have to take these days. So first of all, he was resident, but whether he will be a ordinary resident or a not ordinary resident, we have to decide. So 24-25 means 25-26 means that we have to take into consideration the previous year, that is 2024-25. In 2024-25, he is remaining there for 72 days. So that means he is a resident. Now we have to count down, that is for whether he is ordinarily resident or not ordinarily resident. So if we just check back the first point of the additional condition, that is how many days did he stay in the last 7 years. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It makes it, is it more than 729 days? So it is 335. If you just add this 335 and 365, it is 695, no, 700, and then 3, obviously it is more than 729 days. So it is the number of days is more than 729 in past 7 years preceding that. And the second condition, that is for how many days in the 10 previous year. So he has not been a non-resident. Obviously he fulfills the second condition also, that is he has in the out of 10 years previous year, should he be staying for more than, that is the, if we just go back to check the conditions, additional conditions, it is here. First, he has to stay, he is in India for 182 days or more during the financial year, or he has been at least 365 days during the last 4 years. But the previous, so in this question, the second condition is being fulfilled very clearly. If just for your reminding you, I just came back to the previous slide, that is, if she has been in India for at least 365 days, you just check out this condition, this point. So he fulfills this one, because he is staying for more than 365 days, and in the previous year he is staying for 72 days, which is more than 60 days. So therefore we declare that yes, he is a resident. And now coming to the second situation, second additional conditions, that he has been residing in India at least 2 out of 10 previous years preceding the relevant, and 730 days in 7 preceding years. So coming back to our this this one, yes. Is he completing 2 years? Yes. In the previous 10 years, it is more than 2 years. If you calculate the number of days, it is more than 2 years in past 10 years. So he fulfills the second 2 conditions also. So now we can also, on the basis of this calculation, we can conclude that he is a resident, and also means plus he is also an ordinarily resident. I hope this is clear. This is how you calculate the number of days, putting the calendar before you, the day of leaving and the day of joining. So I hope the decision how to decide, taking into consideration the basic and the additional condition, is clear to all of you. Now we move on to the next part. That is, what are the exceptions to section 6A 1A, which are applicable since 2000, from the assessment year 2021-22. Before the Finance Act 2020, an individual residential status, it depended solely on the number of days of physical stay in India, as per the conditions in section 6 para 1 of the Income Tax Act. However, it was observed that many high income Indian citizens managed to avoid tax residency in any country, commonly which is referred to as stateless persons or citizens without tax domicile. So even though they had substantial economic interest in India, so in order to plug this loophole, or do away with this loophole and prevent the tax avoidance by, maybe within inverted commas, we can say that stateless but high income Indians, the Finance Act 2020, they introduced section 6 1A para 1A, effective from the assessment year 2021-22, that is the previous year 2021 onwards. This section provides for deemed residency, a situation where an individual is treated as a resident but not ordinarily resident, that is RNOR, even if he does not satisfy the basic day count conditions of residence under section 6 para 1. So here we must talk into detail about this. Deemed residency under section 6 para 1A sub para A, that is Indian citizens not liable to tax elsewhere. The conditions are that the individual shall be deemed to be a resident but not ordinarily resident if all of the following conditions are satisfied. That is, first, there are 3 conditions, so we have to check out all the 3, and we have to check out if all of the following conditions are satisfied or not. He is an Indian citizen. That is not a foreign citizen or a mere person of Indian origin. Second condition that is important is his total taxable income during the previous year excluding the income from foreign source, exceeds 15 lakhs, rupees 15 lakhs, and he is not liable to tax in any other country by reason of domicile, or a residence or any other similar criteria during the previous year. Let me just explain them more deeper in order to have a better understanding. Here, the word Indian citizen in the first point, which says that he is an Indian citizen and not a foreign Indian citizen, the provision here applies strictly to Indian citizens only and not to foreign nationals or OCI or maybe PIO card holders. Secondly, the income threshold that has been defined 15 lakh. It says that income should be from Indian sources, that is salary or rent or maybe business income, etc. It must exceed rupees 15 lakhs. Income from foreign sources, that is maybe you are generating that in salary from abroad, or you are earning interest from some investments in the foreign countries, or your savings some in some foreign bank accounts. It is so income from the foreign sources are ignored for this calculations. Then they are also not liable to be taxed elsewhere. That means that the person should not be a tax resident in any other country. This ensures that the rule only targets individuals who are stateless for tax purpose from the point of view of taxes only, and it should not be interpreted in terms of other references or backgrounds. So, the impact or maybe the effect of this is that we find that such an individual will be deemed to be the resident in India, but his residential status will automatically be resident but not ordinarily resident, that is RNOR, regardless of the period of stay in India. So this means that even if the person has stayed in India for only few days, he will still be treated as RNOR if the above conditions are met. Even if he fulfills all the above conditions, still his status will be remain as RNOR. Another example, maybe Mr. Raj, who is an Indian citizen, he resides in Dubai and he manages his business from there. During the financial year 2024-25, he visits India for only 25 days. Only for 25 days, that is in the financial year 24-25. His total Indian income from rent and dividend, it amounts to rupees 20 lakh. Now, he is not liable to tax in UAE or any other country. He declares that he is not liable to any taxes in UAE. Now, first point, condition it fulfill. Does it fulfill that he is an Indian citizen? Yes, he is an Indian citizen. His Indian income, does it exceed 15 lakh? Yes. The second condition is also fulfilled, that yes, he is his income exceed, because it is 20 lakhs here. And then third condition, he is not taxable in any other country. Yes, Dubai is not charging any taxes on this person. Here he will be deemed to be the resident in India, but not ordinarily resident in India. So this is, I think this explains the amendment very well. That is this kind of situation, if the person is an Indian citizen but he is not taxed elsewhere, and at the same time his income is exceeding rupees 15 lakhs from Indian sources only, then he is a resident, deemed to be a resident but not ordinarily resident. Now coming to the deemed residency under section 6 para 1A subpara B, that is Indian citizens or PIO visiting the India. Deemed resident under section this, maybe we can just to explain this, we can say that an individual shall also be deemed to be the resident but not ordinarily resident if they fulfill some of the conditions. Again, that is, he is an Indian citizen, or maybe he is a person of Indian origin, that is PIO, person of Indian origin. Secondly, the second condition is his total taxable income during the previous year, excluding income from excluding the income from foreign sources, it exceeds rupees 15 lakh. Third, his condition is he comes to India on a visit during the relevant previous year, and he stays in India during that year in 120 days or more, but less than 182 days, and he has been in India for 365 days or more during the 4 years immediately preceding that previous year. So these are the four conditions to in order to satisfy or fulfill this. Just to explain it a bit deeper, let us just go through this. That is, let me go through the conditions one again to make it more understandable. The person of Indian origin, as it is in the first point, he may be an Indian citizen or a PIO. So a PIO, a person is considered as a PIO if they or either of the parents or great grandparents were born in the undivided India. They were born before the partition. Okay. Undivided India means before partition. So this definition of PIO must be very clearly remembered. That is, anybody who is, if they or maybe their parents or their grandparents, they are born in undivided India. Second point is second important things that is there in the condition. It is regarding the visits to India. The individual should be visiting India temporarily, for example, for family business or for personal purpose. So that visit should be there. It is mandatory situation. Third, 120 to 182 days rule, that days have to be the number of within these limits. And next, previously Indian citizens or PIO used to stay up to 180 days without becoming the resident. So previously it was there, but from the assessment year 2021-22, this threshold was reduced to 120 days. That is from 181 to 120 days for those earning over rupees 15 lakhs in India. The person, and also the person must have been in India for at least 365 days in total during the 4 preceding years. So that is, just 4 years previous preceding the previous year, that 365 days have to be counted in. These are the points. I hope the conditions are more clear now. So we can say that such an individual, though they are physically present in India between maybe 120 to 181 days, will be treated as resident but not ordinarily resident if the above conditions are met. They are qualified. And if the stay exceeds 182 days, they will be treated as a resident under the normal rules. So here, and we must also be, clear about understand income from foreign sources. Here, income from foreign sources means income which accrues or arises outside India. We can say except income that is derived from a business controlled in or a profession set up in India. This means that if an Indian citizen earns income from a business controlled in India, even if the business operates abroad, such income will not be considered as the foreign source of income. So these are the two subparas of section 6, 1 A, subpara A and subpara B. I hope these are clearly understood by you. That was section 6, para 1A, subpara A and subpara B. So we move further on to that, and let us understand the subpara B in a bit detail with the help of an example. The example says here that Miss Priya, a person of Indian origin, settled in the USA, visits India for 150 days during the financial year 2024-25. Her total Indian income from consultancy services and rent is 18 lakh. She was in India for 400 days during the preceding year. So first, whether the first condition, whether she is a citizen or PIO in this situation, she is the person that is PIO, person of Indian origin. So this point is clearly explained here. Then her income is whether it is more than 15 lakh or not. Yes, it is 18 lakh in this case. That is, it is greater than rupees 15 lakhs. So she fulfills this second point also, second condition also. Did she visit India during the year? Then it says that she was in India for 400 days. The situation was that she has to visit India for either personal or for anything, and it should be more than between 120 and 181 days. So yes, she visited India. This also is fulfilled. And then she stayed for 150 days, which is between 120 and 182 days, 181 days, and it is greater than 365 days in the preceding 4 years. Yes, because she stayed here in for 400 days, which is more than 365 days in the preceding year. So she qualifies all the conditions that are required to be treated as the resident, but not ordinarily resident for the year 2024-25. So this is how these conditions need to be fulfilled. We have to check the data. So check the data whether each conditions are indistinctively fulfilled or not. So this is how, I hope this is clear to all of you. Now we come to, till now we were discussing about the individual's residential status. Residential, if it is resident, then ordinarily resident or not ordinarily resident. Now we come to discuss about the details regarding how the decision must be taken in order to decide whether the whether the residential status, what is the residential status and how to decide the residential status of Hindu undivided family or any business firm, a partnership firm or a sole proprietor firm, and AOP. AOP is your associations of person. That is when a few or more people, they come together in order to start or run some business. To begin with, first, and before we understand and go into the conditions, first let us understand some legal basis, that how and what should be there to determine the status. So here we can say that the determination of the residential status of Hindu undivided family or a firm or AOP is governed primarily by the provisions of Section 6 Para 2 and Section 6 Para 6 Subpara B of the Income Tax Act 1961. These provisions deal with how much with these provisions deal with how such entities are categorized as resident or non-resident, and in the cases of HUF, whether they are ordinarily resident, that is ROR, or not ordinarily resident. So here we have to, these are the sections that govern them. So let us check the status, that how we do it, how do we determine it. The rule under section 6 para 2 says that a Hindu undivided family or a firm or AOP is said to be a resident in India in any previous year if the control and management of its affair, please mark the words control and management of its affairs is situated wholly or partly in India during that year. So here we can say that conversely, maybe it is said to be the non-resident if the control and management of its affair is situated wholly outside India, completely outside India during that previous year. So that means the first thing we have to check while checking the residential status where the control and management of his affair is situated. This is an important phrase, and it refers to the central control and decision making authority of the entity, not merely a day-to-day or routine operations of the business or of the work. Here, it means that the head and brain of the business, where the key policies, strategic decisions, and directions are formulated. Uh, it does not refer to where business operations are physically carried out, but rather where policy decisions are made. Okay. So this thing has to be, we have to decide on the basis of the control and management of its affairs. Maybe we can say that, explain it better with the help of an example. That is, maybe if the major policy decision of a partnership firm are taken in Mumbai, suppose, even though its branches operate in Dubai or Delhi or maybe Singapore, anywhere else, the firm's control and management is considered to be situated partly in India. And therefore, it will be treated as a resident firm because in Mumbai, the major policy decisions take place. Therefore, it will be treated as a resident firm. However, if all the strategic decisions and control lie outside, suppose maybe in London or maybe in Dubai office, as we said, the firm will be treated as a non-resident. Uh, Now coming to the decision on the basis of that is the what is the basic rule for deciding the residential status of HUF. We'll discuss them one by one. So for HUF, if we just talk about, Hindu undivided family is resident in India if the control and management of its affair is situated wholly or maybe partly in India during the relevant previous year. If the control and management is situated outside India, then maybe the HUF will be treated as a non-resident, as explained. Further, if the further classification is like if the HUF is found to be a resident, it can further be classified once you have taken the decision on the basis of management part. Then it has to be further classified into resident and ordinarily resident, or resident but not ordinarily a resident. So this classification depends on the residential status of the Karta, that is the manager of the HUF, as per section 6, para 6, subpara B of the Income Tax Act. So the because in see HUF or Hindu undivided family, we have Karta. Who is a Karta? Karta is the head of the family. As in previous session, I already gave a brief explanation about HUF, which I just repeated just again. Hindu undivided family is a traditional business, is a family business. Traditional means they are very much prevalent in India, and there are so many, family business that are carrying on with all the family members. So the business is run by the family members, means anyone who is born in that family is the son or daughter or maybe what, and the oldest member of the family becomes the Karta. That is maybe the grandfather or maybe the senior most eldest brother of the family will be treated as the head, and he will be the Karta. So here the residential status will also be of the Karta is also to be checked. So whether this, in order to confirm the condition for ROR and RNOR. So a resident HUF will be treated as resident and ordinarily resident if the Karta, that is manager, he satisfied following two conditions. The first condition is that the Karta has been a resident in India in at least 2 out of the 10 previous years immediately preceding the relevant previous year, and the Karta has been in India for 730 days or more during the 7 previous year immediately preceding the relevant previous year. So if either of these two conditions, so out of these two conditions, any of the condition is not satisfied, then the HUF will be treated as resident but not ordinarily resident. So please take note of these two conditions. They have to be, they should be, the residential status ROR will be decided on the basis of these two conditions. So if anyone, even if any both the conditions need to be fulfilled, and if any one does not, he becomes the resident but not ordinarily resident. Let me make it more clear with the help of an example. It says that, maybe suppose if I say that the control and management of the Hindu undivided family XYZ, any HUF, is partly in India. The Karta stayed in India, suppose for 800 days during the last 7 previous year, and he satisfies, so here what do we find? The Karta was resident in India out of the 10 previous year for 3 years. So obviously, as we said, that at least he should have stayed here for 2 years, so it is more than 2 years. And the second was, at least he should have stayed for more than 730 days for in the last 7 years. So it is your this is for, he stayed here for 600 days, so which is more than, the Karta is stayed here for 600 days, which is less than 730 days. So he does not fulfill or satisfy one condition, only one condition is satisfied. So the conclusion will be, or the decision will be, that though he is a resident but not ordinarily resident, he will be treated this way. Similarly, suppose if the control and management of the HUF's affair were wholly situated outside India. Suppose maybe if it is situated in London, and all the major decisions and meetings they were all conducted in London, then it will be treated as a non-resident. So no point of coming to Karta to check the residential status of Karta then, because here, since the management of its affair is outside India, he will be treated as a non-resident, irrespective of Karta's personal stay in India for whatever. Then we have to also take note of the residential status of firm and AOP. This was all about the HUF. HUF is the is one of the identity which is treated similar to almost individual, that is, it has the status of residential or not residential, and if it is decided to be residential, then whether ordinarily or not ordinarily. Whereas when we come to decide the residential status of firms and AOP, for firms and AOP, the Act does not further classify the resident entities into ordinarily resident or not ordinarily resident, that is ROR or RNOR. There are only two categories, that is, either they are resident in India or they are not resident in India. It is not more than that. So rule under this is for to understand this, it is the rule under Section 6, Para 2, that is, a firm or AOP is resident in India. This is Section 6, Para 2 says that a firm or AOP is resident in India if the control and management of its affair is situated wholly or partly in India during the previous year. If the control and management is wholly situated outside India, then it will be treated as a non-resident. Maybe we can understand it. Let me explain it better with the help of an example. Suppose a firm has its head office in Delhi, whereas it has its offshoots or maybe branches in Singapore. Then all policies and administrative decisions are made in Delhi. Here they are made in Delhi. That means control and management is partly in India. So when they, because they said that everything decision making body was Delhi, so obviously this firm will be decided to be the resident in India. Similarly, if we go for another example, suppose an AOP is formed abroad. It is formed outside India, and all the decisions and meetings and management activities, they are carried out in Dubai. Then control and management is wholly outside India. Obviously, we will declare it to be a non-resident AOP. I hope this is quite clear that the control and management test is a qualitative test. It focuses on whether the strategic control lies, where the control lies, and not where the routine operations are conducted. For HUFs, the residential status depends on both the location of control. For HUF, the residential status depends on both the location of control and the Karta's stay in India. So that means the qualitative aspect is on the location of its management and control of its affair, whereas the quantitative aspect or quantitative calculation depends on Karta's stay in India, for how many days he is staying here or what his residential status is all about. Whereas when we talk about a firm or AOPs, then only the location of central management and control matters. A resident and ordinarily resident, that is ROR, the HUFs are taxed on global income, whereas R and OR and non-resident HUF are taxed only on Indian sources of Indian source income and certain Indian controlled foreign incomes. So this was a detailed explanation about the residential status of HUF, firm and AOP. I hope things are clear. I again conclude that HUF is judged on the basis of qualitative as well as quantitative parameters, whereas the firm and the AOP, they are decided on the basis of the qualitative parameter, that is the strategic control and management. Let's move here to understand this or maybe to work it out in order to declare whether the status, what the residential status stands here. The head office of XY Hindu undivided family is situated in Dubai. Okay, so the head office is in Dubai. The family is managed by Mr. T, who is a resident in India for only 2 years out of 10 years preceding the previous year 2022-23. We have to determine the residential status of the HUF for the assessment year 23-24 if the affairs of the family business are, first condition, wholly controlled in Dubai, and the second is partly controlled in India. Now coming to this, let us, let us take the first condition, that is when it is wholly controlled in Dubai. Here, the affair of HUF are controlled and managed from outside India. I think, therefore, we don't need to bother to any other parts, that is calculation of Karta's stay, because once it is clearly said that it is wholly controlled in India, we can immediately decide that it is a non-resident in the assessment year, for the assessment to year 2023-24. So that makes it so simple. But coming to the second part of the question, or second part of the example, that is partly controlled from India. Under this situation, the affair of HUF are controlled and managed partly from India. Therefore, HUF is a resident of India. Okay, but whether ROR or NROR, we will decide later on the basis of the other situations. So here, first thing is declared that it is HUF is a resident of India. However, it would be ordinarily resident in India if Karta satisfied the conditions that are additional conditions which are laid down in part 2 of section 6 para 6 subpara A, and those situations are, or those two conditions are, that need to be fulfilled, and both have to be fulfilled. First was that he has been resident in India at least. It says he should have been a resident in India for at least 2 years, 2 years out of 10 years. That is 10 years preceding the previous year. So I think the first point is being fulfilled, because it says Mr. T, who is the resident in India, Mr. T, who is a resident in India, remains in India for 2 years out of 10 years. So this first condition this HUF fulfills. The second situation says that he has been in India for a period or periods maybe amounting in all to 730 days. 730 days or more, maybe, or more during the previous 7 years. 7 years. In the past 7 years, his total stay should be 730 days, maybe in small parts, or maybe in whatever, but it has to be. But we do not find any this kind of information in the question. We do not get this. He fulfills only the first condition, and he does not fulfill the second condition. So I think we can take a decision here that as a manager, Mr. T, who is resident in India in only 2 out of 7 years preceding the previous year, the HUF would be resident but not ordinarily resident in India for the assessment year 2023-24. That is R N O R. R because it is partly controlled in India. Otherwise, it is not an ordinarily resident, because he does not fulfill both the condition. Fulfilling both the condition is compulsory, mandatory. So I hope this is clear to all of you with the help of this example. I would suggest that since income tax is a paper which we do not call 100% practical paper or 100% theory paper, it's a blend of theory and practical, because it includes, I would say that 50 to 60%, 60 to 65% of theory and conceptual framework, including all the rules and laws and sections and amendments. If you can only move, and rest is the practical part. The practical part is whatever practical, it's not very difficult, but you will be able to understand or do that practical part you will be able to attempt that only and only when you have a very thorough knowledge of the theoretical aspects. That is the 65 to 70% of the content. So my suggestions to all of you will be that please go through the text, go through the theoretical part, the conceptual part, the sections and subsections, the all whatever is there as per the topic, but to make them more, so that they penetrate well, you will have to practice more. These are some of the example which we do it together here, but I always suggest that please practice more questions on this so that you can understand the theoretical aspect, the sections and subsections in a much better way. So that is all for today. We will continue on the same topic where we will be doing the calculation of whether the income will be taxable or not on the basis of the residential status in the next session. Thank you for today. Thank you.